Well, the Senate could take a final vote as soon as today on a nearly $40 billion aid package for Ukraine. CBS News political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns is following this story for us on Capitol Hill. Caitlin, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning.
So, as you know, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell led a delegation of Republican lawmakers to Ukraine over the weekend, and he told President Zelensky aid was coming. The House approved the package a week ago, so what's the holdup?
That's right. And the Senate was hoping to fast track that legislation last week. And as we've talked about before, it was Rand Paul who held up that vote last week because he wanted an inspector general to oversee the funds that would be in this $40 billion aid package. Now, he was able to slow the legislation but not block it entirely. So they went the traditional route. They had a procedural vote earlier this week. And what was really interesting there, guys, was that 11 Republicans voted against proceeding with the bill, so essentially voting against the measure. And what that signifies is kind of this splintering in the Republican Party right now on foreign policy and sending aid to Ukraine. And that's fascinating because in the beginning of this invasion, in the beginning of the Russian invasion, you saw Republicans pretty much coalesce behind doing everything they could to help Ukraine. They kind of pushed the Trump mantra of America first and questions about NATO, kind of pushed that to the side. That was a dominant foreign policy, obviously, among the Republican Party during the Trump era. Pushed that to the side at the start of Ukraine. But now as the war has progressed and there are questions about how this will end, how open-ended this funding could be, you're starting to see some Republicans raise a lot of questions and show some opposition to this support. In the House side, you had 57 Republicans vote against the bill. Here on the Senate side, you had 11. Now, 11 out of 50, obviously not a huge number, but it is significant because we are starting to see this splintering. And there is a big question for the Republican Party right now about how they could get support for future bills. Mitch McConnell, very interestingly yesterday, came out and said to reporters, but he was essentially signaling to his own conference, look, this is not a handout. This is necessary aid. Europe is also behind us. This is necessary aid for Ukraine that they need. It's also in America's security interests. But there are questions among his own conference about whether they're buying this. Josh Hawley, the senator from Missouri, tweeted out that this is his opposition was because they want to focus on priorities here at home. He said that position is not isolationism, it's nationalism. So really an interesting thread to look here, guys, as we're in this Republican primary season and in a midterm election.
So what does this situation tell us about where the GOP is on foreign policy, whether or not they are still influenced by former President Trump's approach, which was America first, we all remember?
Yeah, and we've been reporting on this in the early days of the conflict. I was talking to national security experts who said that it was pretty interesting that at that time, Republicans didn't seem to be taking their cues from Donald Trump. Remember, in the early days and before the conflict, Donald Trump was praising Putin and calling him smart and savvy. You started to see a reaction, a negative reaction among Republicans to that, and they were kind of pushing that to the wayside. They weren't taking his cues from him on foreign policy. But fast forward to May now, you're starting to see some Republicans sing that tune again. And so what Mitch McConnell is trying to do up here is to really, hold his ground and hold the party's ground to the more conservative, traditional approach to foreign policy, that America's role in the world is an important one, and it is in America's national security interests and global security interests to be aiding Ukraine. But again, because this is an open-ended conflict, there are going to be questions raised for not only lawmakers, but the White House as well, about how much aid should continue and when this, what the parameters are. And there's also lots of questions here among Republicans, especially about the kind of spending, about the kind of oversight of this spending. So wouldn't be surprised if we start to see more objections further down the road, and also something to keep an eye on for Democrats as well, as they are looking at their agenda being stalled and priorities for them here at home, facing really big opposition in Congress. Do they start to break away in any form? Just something to keep an eye on.
All right. Caitlin, always great to have you. Thank you very much.